who are on the line for joining us for this excellent DFMCH mentorship panel. We have really the dream team all-star panel of mentors here to answer our questions and talk with us about mentorship today. All three of these people have been mentors to me during different points in my career, and I can highly recommend them all personally, as well as getting to see their work. So we have Dr. Patricia Tellez-Giron, Dr. Val Gilchrist, and Dr. John Frey. And though I could talk for a long time about each of them, we're going to give them the opportunity to introduce themselves to us with an opening question of what has mentorship meant in your life? And can you share any noteworthy successes or mishaps? Or how might you define excellent mentorship? So, looking at the panel here, John, you're actually on the first one on my screen. So maybe if we could go John and then Patricia and then Val, that would be excellent.
Okay. Yeah, I'm John Frey, and I'm an emeritus professor, which means you're old and you get 5 parking spaces. So I started my residency in 1970 in Miami, or 71 actually. And so the important thing for me is I never was in an era where family medicine was institutionalized as either a resident or a young faculty member. We were all making it up as we went along. So one of the things that was not in place was formal structures for mentoring or guidance or anything like that. I can tell you some stories about that. But anyway, my first job that I went to was brand new residency, new department, et cetera, et cetera. And so we, again, had new medical school, actually. So we had really very few rules and guidelines. And so I found mentors. You know, there's a Zen saying that says when the pupil is ready, the teacher will appear. And I was fortunate enough to, I guess, be ready, and people came along who were important to me. And the thing I learned early on was you have to be proactive if you want to find somebody who you really want as a teacher and guide. And so I would go up and talk with them in meetings or find the time to talk with them and kind of be much more proactive. But then when I got into institutional structures like North Carolina and Madison, there were all sorts of guidelines. And by that time, I had gone through a number of hoops, so I wasn't as affected personally, but I had a lot of responsibility, both as a director of a fellowship program in North Carolina and as a chair in Wisconsin. So one of the things I learned is that the importance of any mentoring process has a great deal to do with the institution you join. You really need to understand what you're joining and what the rules are, guidelines are, whatever you want to call them, before you start, as opposed to get there and then say, oh, I didn't know that. So when I work with young faculty members, I really emphasize the fact, understand the nature, the culture, the guides of your institution. And then personally, you know, I've had a few mishaps, both as a mentor and as a person who had assigned mentors, was that we tried to do a little cross-disciplinary stuff where somebody from family medicine, when I was in Madison, I was assigned as a mentor to a young physician in a surgical specialty. And, you know, surgeons are different, family doctors are different, our careers are different. So we had nice chats over coffee about basketball, but not a great deal that was helpful, I think, to him about his career. So that particular effort, unfortunately, didn't work. Others were much more, I think, working with people who were already at the senior level. So when you're in a leadership position, and Val would probably second this, your job is to help people who are in a senior role to think about career directions and stuff. And the last thing I kind of highlight when I was talking to myself, I talk to myself a lot, but when I was talking about or thinking about this, is I really believe that there are three kinds of mentors, probably many, many more, but mentor is a term which is usually associated with institutional guidance. And it's not something I think of myself now as a coach, a guide, a whisperer, an older person, and all that kind of stuff. My role is now non-institutional, and I really like that a lot. But when you're in an institution, you have to have someone who knows the rules and will work with you. And so that's a formal institutional mentor, which every department needs to have for everybody at every level, and clinical as well as tenure track, et cetera, et cetera. Then there's a kind of mentoring or coaching or whatever that is about being a career mentor. And it's something I wish I had had in a formal way in my life, but I sought them out. I found people to talk with, call them on the phone, say, I can't figure this out, can you help me? Things like that. And so a career mentor is somebody that you choose and you develop a relationship with, or as a senior faculty member, what I've been doing more over my life is calling people who are junior, who I know or who I'm interested in their career, and just say, you want to have a coffee and talk. But it's a safe place. It's a place to talk about decision-making, careers, and all those kinds of things. So a career mentor is somebody who helps you think through your life. And it's an important role. It's important, actually, as I got to be older, the part that was more interesting was helping my colleagues think about the career after being a chair or after being in leadership, which no one ever talks about or did. So that's been a great deal of fun. But the last thing I realized yesterday, I was reading through some things, is we should have intellectual mentors or intellectual. You need to have people who inspire you, whose writing, whose research, whose work has guided you. And you have to find that. It's a lot of work. That means to be a good faculty member and be a good teacher, you have to keep learning, and you learn by reading. And you have to read for two things: learn for content and some of the things that are going on in medicine, but also read for ideas, read for things that inspire you. I mean, I can name the most important teachers in my life who never taught me anything clinically. In fact, I probably taught them some things clinically, but they taught me about so many things relative to community service, research, ideas, et cetera. And they have been the thing I've held on to for my whole life. And now I'm finding that in this stage of my life, I'm finding new people with new ideas. So intellectually, it's important to read and think and call and write. I've got an appointment on Friday to talk with someone who started one of the most remarkable programs I've ever read about, and I just picked up the phone and called them. Said, let's talk. So we're going to have a talk on Friday. So I'm always searching for teachers. I think you all should always be searching for teachers. And those three kinds of mentors are things that I've been using for my life.
Thank you so much, John. Patricia, we would love to hear from you.
So I first have to say that it is such an amazing thing to be in a panel with two of my most respected mentors that I have had through residency, and that I learned so much from both of them. And I never even imagined that I will be doing this together with them, because they have always been, so important to me, to the point that I couldn't call John forever, because he was Dr. Frey, right? But I think I come to mentorship in a different way. I think that I have to name that my first two most important mentors were my parents, and how they always taught me the respect and love for our community and service, and gave me very, very important lessons about how to do it. I was raised in Mexico, did my medical school in Mexico. I started at 18, which is amazing to think now. How could you even decide what you want to do at 18? And then I had wonderful mentors through my medical school because they always noticed that I really wanted to learn and wanted to serve and do the right thing. And then when I came to the United States, my community was my mentor, teaching me what the needs were, where is that I was needed, how is that my skills could help others. And then like that is how I got into formal mentorship because, I started the residency and then graduated, and I had two of the most wonderful mentors that I could have, Ken Kushner and Dick Anstead, in heaven now. And it's very interesting because you will think that, and we know this by research and all that, that when you have mentors that look like you, that understand, right, where you're coming from, the mentorship relationship will work better. But actually, these two white guys taught me so much about what I needed to learn to work in the United States, to fit in the culture of medicine in the United States, how to navigate the system that unfortunately even to now is geared to men and to white men as a minority woman. So I think it was actually something really good because they helped me navigating through this. And then I become a faculty, which again, I never even imagined that I will be a faculty. And through that journey, again came my next call where I started getting to know minority students that were lost in the system, that came to me asking for my experience as a minority woman working in medicine. And like that, it was 1, it was 2, it was 3, it was 4, right? And little by little, I realized that, okay, I really need to know more about how to do this to be able to guide them in the way they need. They don't only need the guidance on how to navigate the medical system, how to do pre-med, med, residency, but more importantly, they needed love. They needed compassion. They needed caring. They needed someone that understood where they were coming from. And there I said, oh, that I can do because I'm coming from the same place. I get to this country, I got to work in jobs that you probably work or your family is working. I get to see the struggle as a minority. And they came to me telling me how the traditional mentorship programs that we have were not helping them because the traditional mentorship programs did not get that they were not the same as everybody else. When you have someone that comes to you and say, I don't know what to do because my parents are undocumented. They don't understand what it means to go to college or to go to medical school. I am afraid that it's too long and I should be helping them and working whatever jobs to help them and to understand that this is an investment for the long term for their families, right? So that's how I felt into mentorship, right? And then I started getting referrals from other people that say, oh, she's a foreign medical graduate. I have this foreign medical graduate doctor that needs help on how to navigate, how to be a doctor in the United States. Could you help them? And then I started doing then mentorship for foreign medical graduates. And then little by little, I just realized that, okay, how am I going to be able to help all of them? So I have had wonderful, wonderful partners here at WINGRA and with the residency program that have been able to also join me in helping with shadowing, with doing presentations, with sometimes taking some of my jobs so that I could then also be able to do the other things that I do. So now I really see that as one of my passions, not because of my own interest, because more of the need that I see in the system. And, sometimes I wanted to think that, okay, hopefully in 10 years, they will not need me anymore because we will have programs that will be targeted to us. Unfortunately, it has been 25 years and we still don't have systems that could really provide for what the students that I mentor need. And again, we go from high school students all the way to faculty that needed a different kind of mentorship, a mentorship that has to include what John mentioned, very formal on what the rules are and how to follow the rules to get to from A to B, that needed including like, I don't have health insurance, could you help me get health insurance? That included getting texts sometimes where I just need to talk because I'm depressed, right? So even though we know that there are different types of mentorship, sometimes for some population, you have to become kind of the, I'll do anything you need and I'll find the resources that you need. So I'm going to leave it at that because I'm sure we're going to talk much more about this later.
Thank you so much, Patricia. Val, would you mind giving us an introduction to your career in mentorship? Oh, hang on, you're muted. Let me unmute you. Oh, maybe you have to unmute you.
There. How's that?
There you go. Perfect.
Yeah. So I'm sitting here listening and thinking Patricia is giving such an amazing description of the holistic mentor. There's lots of discussion in the literature about different kinds of mentorship, and that was such a great job, Patricia, for the holistic mentorship. And John about the institutional mentorship, which we all, at some level, at least I do, struggle with because it's constrained by what we kind of have to do. And then the career mentorship, which I have received many benefits from career mentorship over the years. And I'd like to say that mentorship is a two-way street also. So doing this leadership work that I do now is as I've said, and I say again to people like Patricia and John and many others, Russ and others I see, Bruce on the screen, get more out of it than I give, in the sense that there's this spectrum for me between mentorship that extends all the way to friendship and persists over years. So the one thing I would tell people talking about mentorship is it's not one mentor, it's multiple mentors. And multiple mentors over the years. Some will persist, some won't. I've had some fabulous, for example, research mentors, and still talk to them and work with them. But there was a time that for 10 years when I was intensely involved with getting mentorship writing and working as part of a research team. So that the sort of spread is really to be responsive. How do you judge a good mentor? A good mentor meets the mentee's needs. So it really is a responsiveness to others. One of the things that I think about is that it's the my example of mentorship that popped into my mind as I thought about was about 5 years into my career. And I was trying to decide whether I was going to move from a beginning residency program. Interestingly, John and I both joined residency programs as they were starting. So this is in the 80s. And what a good mentor can do is have you think deeply about what you want to do. So I remember one saying to me, well, Val, I was thinking of going to a more academic place, a case, and they were saying, well, what do you really want to do? And I thought about that for a couple days, and I came back and I said, well, I think I really want to have another child. And so mentorship spans all domains of your life, as Patricia and John know. So those are, I guess, my random thoughts that I'll bring to the table, and other people can augment or append and comment with the group. Thanks, Jensi.
Yeah, thank you all. Well, we have some questions that we have come up with to ask these excellent mentors. Although you each touched on different aspects of these already, I would invite you to take them as they come. We will also have an opportunity at the end for questions that you all have for this group. So feel free to think about those and enter them in the chat while we're asking some of our questions we've already thought about. So one of the things that I would like to ask the three of you is, and like I said, you already touched on this each to some degree, but what makes mentorship meaningful and how do we sustain that across years?
I can start because obviously I love what I do. What is meaningful when you see someone be successful? I have a story where I had this very nice lady that really wanted to be a doctor, but was told that because of her resources, she couldn't be. So she became a nurse. And then I don't even really recall who sent her to me. And when she came to me, she said, I don't think I could ever go to medical school. I don't have resources. I don't think I'm smart enough. And when I look at her and I saw her background and all that, I'm like, what are you talking about? You can do this. You really can do it. We can do it together. She's now doing pediatric orthopedic surgery in Harvard. Okay. So that's what keeps me going. When I see people that come that maybe other people has told them they cannot do it or that they don't have the resources to do it, and that I am able to see them get to where they really wanted and needed to be to help our communities, that keeps me going. That keeps me going. When I see other people that tell my students that they cannot do it, I even go even more for it to prove that, yes, we have what it takes and we're going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Patricia. John or Val, do you have any thoughts on it? I suspect there's some overlap and similarities in that seeing people succeed.
Yes, and I just, again, thinking about this, was reminded about a young woman who I had as a patient in Belleville, who I then talked to when she went into university and through engineering, and maybe she'd go to medicine, and she went to medicine, and maybe she'd go to family medicine, and she went to family medicine, and she's finishing now at Washington, in Oregon. And I'm just hoping that she might come back to our area. So Russ, if I hear that she is, I'm going to send her your way. So it's that kind of development, but I really think it's meeting the mentor's needs. And they may be all sorts of things. There's lots of literature on people that have mentors and multiple mentors are more successful. Because you may want your mentor to tell you the politics of a place or the how you do something, what John called the institutional mentorship. But it's getting support and being, I think if I was going to, again, give advice, is that getting a mentor, really just ask. Because some of the challenges for me, am I losing something here? I'm getting a lot of feedback. There. Is that better?
Yeah. There we go.
I think one of my frustrations is I see people who I think should be getting mentorship or maybe are making some uninformed decisions. And yet, even if I tentatively offer, or other people tentatively offer, it's a decision that people have to make for themselves. And their openness and their privacy and their wish to make that decision is theirs. So I will close at that and turn it over to Dr. Frey.
I'm sorry, I figured out how to mute and unmute finally. It's real talent. That's really well said. And the thing I would probably point out from my own life, and someone said again early, because we didn't have structured stuff like they have now, is when we had phones, pick up the phone and call somebody. If you read something and you're inspired by it, or you're interested in it, or it's a piece of research that you really think is great, pick up the phone and call the person and say, I read your work, I was really inspired by what you wrote. Could we talk about that? Or I have some ideas. Would you mind listening to some of my ideas on this particular topic? So one of the ways to have a large network of people who are teaching you throughout your career is to make connections with people around either research or ideas or many things. But the basic thing is reach out and talk with people. And I do believe that talking is better than writing, but on the other hand, most of us start with writing. But that's not emphasized enough in my experience with young people, is it's all in the institution. And most of my most inspiring teachers in Madison were not in the department of either family medicine or in the medical school. They were in, rural sociology and landscape architecture and all sorts of other places. So the stuff that I've done that's been the most fun has been with people who are outside of the mainstream of what medical schools are all about, which is one of the real limitations of medical schools, is we're taught to think you can only go in these walls, literally. Don't. Pick up the phone or write something and do it.
I think for all three of you, that brings us actually to a question that I'm going to ask you a little bit out of order, but do you have any other strategies, tips, things that people should be considering on how you get started finding a mentor if you don't have one presently, or you don't have the mentors that are meeting your needs right now?
So I'll just jump in because I said just ask. So now that sounds simple, but at least I couldn't have imagined myself coming up to somebody that I had read their stuff or heard them talk and said, will you be my mentor? I don't think that's quite how it goes. But I think talking to somebody about a decision you're trying to make or an idea you're struggling with, and everybody loves to talk about the ideas that they've written about or talk about. But I think that coming to that person, 99%, especially in family medicine, you're going to find an openness, because if they're not the right person, they're going to send you to other people, and they're going to help you develop that network that really is going to situate you in a network of mentors.
I'm going to say again that for communities that are underrepresented, it is really hard to do. And we assume that it's easy. So the Center for Pre-Health Advising has all these, like, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. And they feel that everybody's going to know how to do it. And if you are not an underrepresented student, you might have already a lot of connections in the community through your parents, through school. But underrepresented students do not have those connections because their parents may have never gone to college, or just in the places where they are in their environment where they are might not feel compelled to ask. Culturally also is not something that we do. Dear John Frey, I came to his office and he said, I say, what do I do when I go to STFN? And he said, you just mingle, you get in that room and you just talk to people. Of course, John Frey can do that. Patricia Tellez-Giron at that stage was like, oh my goodness, that's not what we do, but I'm going to have to. And I forced myself. Thank you, John, for getting me off my comfort zone. But remembering that experience, when I talk to my students, I have to explain and say, I know that culturally we don't do this. Do you want to be successful in this culture? You're going to have to push yourself a little bit more, but this is how we're going to establish the connection. So I try to connect them with other people that might be helpful to them. And then I start teaching them, like, if you don't ask what you need, you are not going to get it. So I was thinking that it's almost like dating, that you advertise that you're looking for a partner. So the same thing, anywhere you go, you advertise that you're looking for a mentor. And what do you need that mentor for? What help do you need with? And then, people might say, oh, I can do that. I can help you with that. As a mentor, not that I need more mentees, but I advertise myself. I cannot help it. So the other day, they had this student here at Wingra, and I went and I say, hey, who are you? And then I learned that he's a pre-med student. And then I talked to Kim that was helping him with shadowing. And I say, hey, if you want, tell your student to send me a message. I will be happy to help your student. So I have to do that because I understand that for some people it's not easy to say, could you be my mentor, as Val mentioned. So sometimes you just have to kind of put yourself also out there to help people.
And I see that you put your hand up there. I will give you the stage to ask a question or add on to what our wonderful mentors had to say. Oh, you're on mute. Nope, you're still on mute.
Yeah, we cannot hear you, Alan. And we really want to hear you.
You know what? Feel free to put it in the chat, Alan, and I'll read it for you as well. So
I will add what I was going to say, that is on the shoulders of all of us, is that we don't have enough minority mentors. I mean, Patricia clones herself, extends herself, and is the person she is. But often, it's limited. And I think that acknowledging that you're not going to be everything for all of the people who need mentor support, but you can be part of it. And you can help that person along, because the minority tax is hard enough.
I appreciate you all speaking to how with the institutional barriers that we have, how we can be better at supporting diverse learners. One of the things that I'd like you guys to talk a little bit more about is, once you've established that mentorship relationship, what parameters for mentorship should be established up front? And even, as you kind of laid out what that request for mentorship can look like. But as you're laying out those parameters, how do we initiate the setting for this relationship?
I think Alan can talk now. Alan, can you talk now?
Yeah. Oh, nope, we still don't have Alan.
You want an answer to or at least an observation, Jensi? One of the things, again, somebody taught me a long, long time ago, was a line that was, if you haven't figured out your question, you come to me too soon, right? So one of the things that, came at a time when I was particularly inarticulate at trying to explain what I was worried or troubled about. And they kind of sent me back to do some homework. Just come back when you can formulate what your questions are. And I think that's a good hint for people working with any kind of teachers or any kind of mentors or career counselors, is sit down and say, here's a question I have, and this is, the kind of help I need. So be very clear, and that can save a lot of time. On the other hand, if you just want to sit and drink coffee and talk about basketball, that's fine too. But I think in a mentoring role, you really want to be clear about what your questions are. And it's like doing a piece of research. Write it down, because when you write it down, it actually becomes clearer. So that helps, I think.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can,
Yes.
Alex. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful. I'm sorry about the technological problems. I come from the age of John Frey, and so I use that as an excuse why you couldn't hear me the first 3 times. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a retired family doc, practiced in Oregon, out in a non-academic setting with First Dean and then SSM. And I've been active with the Specialty Academy as well as the Medical Society. Back after George Floyd died, the Medical Society developed a task force to address some of the issues that came up around that. And I'm not going to use the acronyms because those acronyms are currently part of cancel culture. But I helped the medical students write a resolution about some of the issues you're talking about right now, particularly Patricia, for the people that don't look like me. And out of that, the medical students said, we really need mentors. The programs that are going on through the medical school and some of the others, they're wonderful, but they don't meet my needs when I look like Patricia and have other issues of diversity. And so we are now working on trying to develop mentorship availability for any student or young physician who wants it, particularly focusing on people who, from a diverse background, have not had parents go to medical school. So I'm hopeful that in the next couple of years, some of that will bear fruit. So just wanted to let you know. And Patricia, I probably will be reaching out to you at some point with some of the questions and issues that come up about how to, sensitively be a mentor, and for the students in terms of how to approach. But I'll just say quickly, I would agree with everything that's been said so far about mentoring.
Always ready to help, Alan. Don't worry.
I know you are, Patricia.
Can I just say one more thing? I'm sorry, but one thing that struck me is, how do you learn about places and cultures and things you don't know anything about because of how you grew up and how you are? And believe it or not, one of the things I'm still learning is I'm working with some high school students now who are all Latinos in Chicago, 2 different places. And we were going to talk with students who have interests in careers in health, not medicine, but health broadly, and met with the counselors. And they were kind of pushing us to think about a curriculum. And the colleague I was working with, who was really quite brilliant, said, why don't we go and talk with them and listen? Why don't we sit down and say, what are the things you need help on? How would you? So listening, going, sitting, saying, and being humble. Humility helps a lot when you're trying to get through a career. And so sitting down with these students, boy, I thought I knew all this stuff. It was even in a neighborhood where I lived 50 years ago. And Patricia, you're right. There's things I'd never thought about. I never, that all came out because we listened. And so I think we can create something that's a little more helpful. And that probably is true at every level, patients, communities, other disciplines. At some point, you're going to have to sit down and talk with people who are neurosurgeons, and if you say, well, tell me what your life is like and what are the struggles you're working with? And it turns out that a lot of them are similar to the same ones we are. So anyway, I just wanted to say there is there's still an opportunity to learn if you just sit and talk and listen with, not talk, but listen to people first before you talk.
I did the mic mute myself. Excellent. Thank you all very much. Could you maybe shift our focus a little bit to think about mid to late career faculty and physicians? As a mid-career faculty myself, how do we continue to seek mentorship, and does that look different than an early career?
I think the questions are different, Jensi, but I don't know if it looks a lot different. I think part of John's said it much more in a much more literary fashion than I would, in terms of, know what you want. So what are your expectations of this mentorship? Are you looking at your next move? Are you looking at negotiating job change, salary increase, job decrease, a year off? I mean, all those sorts of things, taking extra training, are things that I've talked to people about that are more mid or later career. And so it's defining that. And then part of the mentor's job is to sort of make those connections and obviously give whatever perspective they have. But as I get older, I realize my piece is just my piece, and there are so many other pieces that I can do my job by making the connection for the individual to talk to. And so that's probably helpful. The other piece I remember from an article I read was that to make it concrete, so to make the next appointment or the next get together so that it doesn't get lost. And one thing you can do as a partnership is call each other accountable, both the mentor and the mentee.
I'm going to say that it is a fun place to be. It's almost like when you were an intern and you didn't know what you know and you were in such a stress, and then you're a second year and now you're like, ooh, I have more freedom, So when you are in the mid, is now the fun stuff, right? Like, what do I really want to do? Now that I don't have the pressure of doing, what is in my heart that I really want to do? And one of the things of why I love being in this program is because we have people with such a diverse interest, right? That you could find someone for whatever you need. There is Tempty with the virus, there is, Randy Brown with all the addiction medicine. So it is just fascinating now to think and to say, what do I really want to do? And I know that I can go to so-and-so for help if it's academic, right? You have also built other type of relationships now. Jensi, I'm so proud of you. And I remember when you were a student with me in the service, and now look where you are, right? So, and now you have built those relationships to the point that okay, if I just need to talk about something that is stressing me, maybe I'll go to Patricia and just talk about this. But if I need a specific mentorship for the next step in my career, I might go to Val. You know what I mean? So now you really get to pick and choose who you want, because now you have those connections built, and it's easier to do than when you were a medical student or a pre-med student that you didn't really have all this network of wonderful people to help you.
Yeah, I'd only say you're absolutely right. Is use your network, but I had a story from back when I was in Chapel Hill and I was taking care of a family, and the whole family is focused on the father's deal with getting promoted and tenured. That was the thing that their whole life revolved around. And every time I'd see him, it's, how's it going? How's it going? How's it going? Going good, going good. Finally, he went up. Finally, we were waiting. And then he came in and said, you know, I got promoted. I got tenure. And I said, that's fabulous. Now what are you going to do? And he gave me this look like, what do you mean? And so the thing you should be thinking about every time you take a job, or every time you get promoted, or every time something is new, is what am I going to do next? And how is this going to help me to do that? Not in a kind of career management point of view, but where are my interests? I think Patricia's point is great, which is, I said to this guy, wow, you could do anything, you know? And he hadn't even thought about that. But the other part of it for me has been, and especially because of the age cohort, I mean, Alan's still younger than I am, but it's to help people who are senior faculty, and many of you on the screen and others are senior faculty, is how do you let go? How do you let go of a role? How do you stop? What's life like after you get beyond leadership, for example? How do you think about when you're a chair or a residency director? Well, what's the next thing if you step out of a leadership role, which is a job, not who you are? And so helping people with that is really important. And that's the responsibility of all of you who are senior people now, to sit down with your colleagues in a very informal way, in a very safe way, and say, how's it going? And how can they help you that way? Or encourage them to talk to people in the area or around the country they might have as part of their network. And I think one of the more gratifying things I've been able to do is to help people let go and move on, which is a big issue for a lot of things in academics.
And I will say that for those people who are physician clinicians in the department and have gotten over that hump that is the associate professor or associate position, they really are faced with that. And they have so many talents at that point. But what do they want? Because really, it's kind of like the fun piece of being retired, in the sense that, boy, I can do all of these things and they're so much fun and it's great. You want that to have that for them too.
So I just want to point out, as Caroline said in the chat, we want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity for some questions and answers. So feel free, if you would like to raise your hand and ask that directly. Otherwise, feel free to put any additional questions in the chat. I had one other question for you all, kind of switching sides of the mentor-mentee relationship. How do we as mentors seek out or invite mentees? If we are seeing, junior faculty, residents, medical students, how you mentioned it a little bit, Val, of kind of reaching out, and then it's the ball's kind of in their court. But I'd love to hear a little bit more. I think you all do an excellent job of helping people find their way to your mentorship. But if you could speak a little bit more towards that.
That's a tough one. And I think for me, repetition and using the phrase of, how's it going? I think this is hard for me, so it's not so hard for maybe others. I'd finish in the clinic and I'd be busily doing my notes, and then I could feel somebody go by and maybe they paused and maybe they wanted to talk, but I was so busy doing the notes, I hardly even looked up. So I think making yourself physically available, also saying, I'm going to be having lunch or having coffee, or, join me, and making that opening a little bit more concrete.
I think, Mickey's Dairy Bar over the years for me was the place to be a mentor. And many of you know that. And so I found that at some point I felt like my life had been successful when someone called me and said, "Do you have a Mickey's available this week?" And so that means that they're going, they want to talk, and that's great. But I think the important thing, believe it or not, is physicians are notoriously bad at asking for help. And that goes from medical through career, through everything. And I think senior people, and you, like I say, you're all on the screen, Patricia, you're a senior person, is call people and say, let's get a coffee. Or you don't have to go to Mickey's. I don't even know what's there anymore. But, call people, and no one over the whole time I've been doing this, anywhere I've been, has ever said, nah, especially since I bought, breakfast. But the point is, it works fine. They had had more kind of coffees and meals and other things over the years that have been wonderful for me and wonderful. I don't know if they're wonderful, but they've been helpful to the people. The last thing I'd say is the thing we always do when we're supposed to be teaching, which is you ask the person you're teaching, has this been helpful? Right? So ask them, has this been helpful? And if they say yes, say, how has it been helpful? So you get a better understanding what the things you do, or how could I be more helpful? Things like that. Just get the kind of process that have them understand that you're there to be helpful to them, and you want to know how that's gone. But, if I'm in town, I'll call one of you for Mickey's and we'll go.
It's still there.
Yeah, Ellen, I saw your real life hand.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, part of the hand was to go up to offer to go to Mickey's with John. I haven't been out to lunch or dinner with or coffee for a long time now. But I was going to say, I've got two rules that applies to what you're saying and what people have said. One is catch someone doing well. So whether you're at a meeting or in an academic setting or whatever else, if you find somebody younger or the same age that seems to do a good performance, ask a good question, whatever else, I think it is our duty as senior clinicians and senior leaders to go up and say, I really liked what you did there. That really sounds good. I think you have a bright future. And then sometimes I'll offer them a card. Sometimes I'll ask, do you want to sit down at the same table for lunch at this meeting and we can chat a little bit? Or the corollary to that is catch someone not doing well. So if you see someone you think has a lot of potential, but maybe didn't give the best presentation or needs some help with PowerPoints or whatever else, go up and say, I just thought I'd stop off and offer you my card. I'd be happy to get together with you and talk a little more about your career. And people receive that very well. A lot of the time, people just approach people like John and Val and Patricia or myself and say, thank you for being here. Could I do this or that a little differently? And John, I'll pay.
Excellent. Do we have other questions for our fantastic mentors?
Tim Bruce has his hand up.
Oh, excellent.
I am wondering if you have any wisdom on, and thank you all for being mentors of some type to me and thousands of others. Do you have any wisdom on balancing the good cop, bad cop? So at least in the research, we get rejected all the time with our manuscripts and their grant proposals or whatever, and we need a cheerleader. But we also need, or at least a lot of people also need to have some holding of accountability, especially like with manuscripts that you've been working on for 15 years, or, you said you were going to have it in last Thursday or 3 Thursdays ago, or over and over, you keep saying. So how do you balance the helping prod people to do what they want to do and said they're going to do with the being nice and cheerleading them?
So what I can tell you is I set expectations from the very beginning. So when I meet with them, I gave them who I am and what I can do for them and what is that I'm going to be expecting. And I say, I'm going to become like your mother. And I'm going to love you like your mother, but I'm also going to be demanding for your own good. So I say, we are doing this more, obviously, because we want you to be successful. But if I don't see that you are putting the effort that is needed, then I'm also going to call you upon that And I'm very honest, and I tell them from the very beginning, I'm going to be very honest if something is working or something is not working, because I think you need it. And they all go like, okay. And obviously they probably all have Latina mothers like me. So they are like, okay, I know the feeling. So I love it. That's good. So in general, I think setting expectations from the beginning of what the relationship is going to be like has been very helpful to me.
So,
Thanks.
Bruce, I was going to say that Patricia took the thunder so well. I can't be the mother, but the expectations we can do. The other piece, though, with writing and writing teams is a really unique. And in my screen, you're right next to Serena, and I don't know anybody that hasn't had more experience managing that than Serena. So I don't know if you want to speak to that, Serena.
So I would say I'm not a Latina mother, but I am a mother, and end up doing a lot of writing with junior people, and there is some sort of coaching and hand holding, but there are also deadlines. And when you're writing, most of us know they're artificial because that tends to fall down. But so there's a little guilt involved, when the whole team, everybody has a deadline and one person doesn't meet the deadline. I mean, you don't need to say anything. Everybody knows that they're not sort of meeting the deadline. So I don't have any more words of wisdom than that, but I think it's a challenge. And, Bruce, to your point, most of the time we're mentoring adults and they know what the consequences are. And so we can encourage and support and be role models, but ultimately, if they fail, they fail. And, we're going to feel bad about it because we don't want that to happen, but we can't force anybody to do stuff.
Yeah, the only thing I'd say is I had the experience of co-writing a chapter in a book with a friend of mine in North Carolina. So I was pretty young, and I was downtown, which is a small town, and I saw him on the street ahead, walking in the opposite direction to me. And so I was going to say hi, and I put my head down or looked someplace, and I looked up, and he wasn't there anymore. And he was on the other side of the street. So what I realized is that I was going to mention to him that he wasn't getting his chapter done, so I learned a lot about, how do you deal with people who you might be friends with or colleagues with and have to be firm with. And you've done that, and other people have done that. And I think people are grateful when they have someone say, you really have to come through. And I had a teacher early in my life who really showed me the way, I was trying to write something, first thing I ever wrote in my life, and he read it, and he had more red notes on my piece of paper than I had on the paper in 24 hours. So I thought, uh-oh, I'm done for. But he said, okay, every Tuesday morning, his wife will make breakfast, and I will show up to breakfast, and I will have something ready. Now, he was a professor of philosophy at Clark University, not a family doctor. But that's how he dealt with his graduate students. So I would pull all-nighters to get done so I'd be available on Tuesday morning to talk to Roger. So, I think teaching people to be responsible, helping people be on time and all that can come across as sometimes difficult. But on the other hand, you really are helping them, and you know that. But it's a tough one, and it comes with leadership. That's what it's all about.
Dejun, I'm sorry that we didn't get to your question unless you think you want to ask that quickly.
Yeah, I mean, this might be just a personal reflection about mentorship. Quickly, based on my career, one lesson I've learned is don't, be fearful to say no when you realize you might not be the best mentor for the student. Because it does incur a lot of responsibility. I recall just quickly when one student was asking me to serve as her PhD supervisor. Then I look at her resume, it's a perfect background, brilliant student. I told her, why not you apply for better schools? And she followed my advice. She was accepted by Yale. So that moment told me, this is something like a marriage, requires serious assessment about, compatibility. And we realize, we're probably not in that position to mentor somebody. I guess we can simply say no, give our honest advice. But I want to thank the panelists for sharing your wisdom here.
Yes, I do too. I just want to read Erlise's comment because it is excellent. It helps to ask what the barriers are, what is getting in the way, and to provide resources along with reminding them of implications of not meeting deadlines, supportive mentoring. So I think that is a nice summary of some of the points you all made. I want to thank all three of you for being part of our mentor panel today. As I said, you've all been wonderful mentors to me along the way, and I appreciate you sharing your wisdom and leadership with all of us here. And thank you all for being attending our panel today. Hopefully you walked away with some great new thoughts about mentorship.